Good evening. Welcome everyone to the Menlo Park Fire Protection Board of Directors meeting, August 20th, 2024. We are beginning at 7:06 p.m. and we will start with our roll call. Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Bloom?
Present.
Director Jones?
Here.
Director Crawley? Present. Director Solano?
Here.
And pledge allegiance next.
Yep.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we did have a closed session discussion and there are no reportable actions from the closed session. So moving on to the public comment number one, and this would be for items that I believe are not on the agenda. Any public comment? Seeing none in the room, we have no public comment. So we can close that public comment section and go to the consent calendar.
Chief.
I checked the wrong box. Thank you. We'll go to the chief's report. Chief Lorenzo.
Thank you, Director Bloom, members of the board, and to our folks that are here or zooming in with us. Pleased to share with you my monthly fire chief's report. Just a quick update on facilities, what's going on with our Station 1. We had when I say we, John Hitchcock had a sit down with the design review team at the City of Menlo Park on August 8th. He met with the planning, building, transportation, and fire prevention, aka us, to go over the plans, purchase the project. The architects are also finishing up with the plan submittal at the end of this month, and then we're on hold for about a month. We are also going to ask the city for a potential exemption from CEQA. We'll see if we're successful on that. Yeah, we're not super high hopes on that, but it'd be great. It would certainly shorten the process if they grant us an exemption. If we're not granted the exemption, then we'll be back in some meetings. Then we'll go to planning commission and then go to the city council, take action on the CEQA and a general plan amendment if applicable. That's it. The city said probably 8 to 12 months before going to city council if they agree that we are exempt from CEQA. Well, if they agree, then that time will change. So that's the update on the Station 1 design. Station 77, just a quick update. Really, I'll point to item 5 that we're not, it's on the consent agenda. That is, the project has been bid, and with the bid award there, we're moving forward on that project. There's the lowest responsible bidder is the same contractor that we used on the Station 3 auxiliary building that we were really pleased with. So we'll be moving forward with that. And it came in under budget as well, which is a good thing. As far as the update on the community engagement unit, I've got a couple things that are in my report that I'll share. I don't have a specific report with numbers or related to classes taught, but I will share with you some of the things we've done. The first is our fire marshal pop-up. We had that last week at the Sharon Park Safeway. Good turnout, lots of back to school folks. Parents and kids both that came by the booth up there. Wasn't able to attend because that was also the same day we were having our after action review over in the city buildings over by Burgess Pool. Some other things going on. I was invited to participate on a panel at our upcoming Cal Chiefs Conference in Costa Mesa. This is an invitation from CAL FIRE who wanted to provide local government with a panel that could talk about the California Fire Assistance Agreement. That's the committee I sit on, California Master Mutual Aid, reimbursements, and a variety of things. So that was a nice honor to be included on that. Just a little information sharing with you. Lots of change occurring at the fire chief level in our San Mateo County. Chief Iverson has announced he's going to be retiring at the end of the year. Chief Thrasher also is going to be retiring. Chief Magallanes has already retired. And Matt Sampson, his deputy chief, was already appointed. They just did a direct appointment from internal staff, didn't even go out, for recruitment.
Which departments were these?
Chief Iverson's Redwood City, Thrasher's, is that Central County? San Mateo, Catalina, did I get all of them? Again, is, South City. And Chief Armstrong is the unit chief. You know, he basically oversees county fire, which is contract Cal Fire, and coast. He's been moved up to Sacramento to work in their PIO office, so to speak. So we'll be working on a replacement for him. Strategic plan update, we are continuing to move forward with that. We are reaching out shortly to all of our community groups for participation. We have a list of people we'd like to participate in that strategic plan update. We also thank you all for working with Michelle to agree on that time that we offered a special board meeting on August 23rd. I think it's 7 o'clock in the evening. So the board can have input and feedback on our strategic plan.
August or
October,
October.
What did
not
I say?
August.
August?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, next week. August.
Sorry.
October.
Gonna say, oh, that's a surprise for me.
I have 10/23 down here. I worked at August, I don't know. October, thank you.
Thank you.
I stand corrected. So that's moving forward. Had a meeting, myself and Director Bloom, with the city manager and mayor of Atherton, at the request of the mayor, which was mostly out of interest, just to talk about emergency preparedness. We talked about a variety of topics, did a lot of listening and also figuring out how we can support Atherton and the ADAC program there. So good conversation. National Night Out, everyone's probably aware that occurred on August 6th. We had engines and battalion chiefs and units out, making the rounds at as many as we could attend. I attended 3, and there's, I don't know, there's probably over 20. I think there was 7 or 8 in East Palo Alto, 1 in Atherton, and a number throughout Menlo Park. So really great event to connect with the community. An automatic aid update. This is really related to continuing to work on our automatic aid agreement with Palo Alto. So that we can start responding on each other's calls. We had a 4-way meeting between ourselves and Woodside, Palo Alto Fire Department, and Public Safety Communications. It's probably one of many meetings on us just trying to figure out how we can reconnect us and do, respond on each other's calls. So it was a good start conversation-wise. We have another meeting scheduled next month. We're going to continue the conversation and try and work on a solution so we can start figuring out each other's statuses so we know what's available and start responding the closest available resource. The deputy chief, well, who was there? Was that McNally that was there? Gio was not able to attend, but he's, I basically shared my vision that it's the same thing that we do here in San Mateo County, that we send the closest available emergency resource regardless of jurisdiction, because that's who Mr. and Mrs. Smith expects. He said his fire chief was, had the same position, so they're interested in us. So that was good. We had just this last Saturday, right here in this classroom and outside, a community group and CERT event here at Station 1. Really, it was an opportunity for all of our community CERT members that were interested and volunteers to come in here and just share some ideas, what's going on, some of the things the different groups are doing. With some of them are preparing caches for their groups. So it's kind of a show and tell and sharing, and then after we're done connecting with our community members in here, we connected with them out in the parking lot with Mr. Softy. He came in and we had ice cream that day, so great, and invited the engine company out also to partake. So that was a nice event, also just to help us connect with our community volunteers. Also, don't can't remember if it was last week or the week before. I participated in Redwood City Fire Chief Deputy interview process. With a number of other panel members, Chief Iverson announced just yesterday that he's made a promotional officer to an internal candidate. That's Battalion Chief Marta Barker, who will be promoted to Deputy Fire Chief shortly. So they have 2 deputy chiefs in that organization. Yeah, perhaps maybe she'll be the future fire chief. Just a quick bullet point here on district board elections. First of all, congratulations to Director Corrali and Solano, and you were not opposed in the district election, so I think by acclamation you automatically get it. The best news for us is not only do we get to keep our 2 existing board members, but the district saves $165,000 for not having to pay our share of that election. So we had budgeted for that and anticipated spending it, so that goes back in our piggy bank. Just a quick update. I know I had shared an email with the board members when things were pretty busy with the park fire up north and shared what our current deployments are. So things have calmed down quite a bit. All of our engines have returned. Currently, we have 2 line medics that are out on deployment, one at the park fire and the other at the Boise fire, which is up in the Klamath area. I was also invited to participate in an emergency preparedness town hall. This is courtesy of our Congressman Representative Mullen. That's going to be next Tuesday at 6 p.m., something that he is hosting. So it'll be Representative Mullen and myself and FEMA Region 9 Administrator Bob Penn. As some of you may know, I've got the fortunate experience of dealing with Bob quite a bit from my large incidents down south, so that'd be good.
Where is that?
It's going to be a virtual. I'll share that with the board if you
Great.
all are interested in tuning in on it. I just had an email from them today. They're interested in me sharing some information about the CERT program, some of our emergency preparedness, things that we're doing here locally for our communities. Yeah, kind of along those lines. So that was a nice invitation. The fire response analysis report is included in here as attachment A. I don't have any specific comments. It's just my intent is to provide that monthly and probably chat about it when something changes or something different is going on. In reviewing the last 3 months, things are pretty consistent. As part of the presentation follow-up, I reached out to Public Safety Communications to arrange for some sit-alongs in there. I'm still waiting to back from them. So we can go in and see if maybe there's a way we can improve on our call processing times and offer, without stepping on toes, offer some observations or suggestions. ESA fire dispatch update. This, since our last board meeting, I received along with every city and fire district, a letter from Mike Callaghy asking us again for a contribution to, reduce the budget gap and what it costs him versus what he gets reimbursed from the ALS JPA. It's the same numbers that he's always talked about before. I know the city managers are planning a meeting. I found out about this. I said, hey, please remember, we also need the 2 fire district chiefs, myself and Chief Sherry Woodside, who in essence act as city managers. So I reached out to Melissa Stevenson with Redwood City. We're now on the invite list. So I will share the information that gets shared. Nobody has any interest in paying, but I'm not sure we're being productive by just ignoring my request. So we'll hopefully figure something out.
Do they want a position from us on this?
Do they want to?
Do they want our views on this, or do you want our views on this before you go into this meeting? I mean, I don't think it's really changed since
No.
the last time, which was last year. Right, I mean, just, I guess, look and listen at this point, I mean.
Sure.
it's-
Yeah, I won't make a commitment.
This is the county's
Yeah, and I'll
dispatch.
come back to the board. And also in addition to this, myself and Chief DeLay from San Bruno and Chief Iverson and Chief Thrasher from San Mateo Consolidated, met with the San Mateo City Police Chief at their dispatch center to look at some potential alternatives. Yeah, what would a regional dispatch center look like there? He said he had space, well, took a look at it just to talk about some options, so we're just trying to explore what are the options out there as we take into consideration, what we might do.
Quick question on that. Since we're talking of Palo Alto, might there be some synergies with them too in terms of communication going? Do they, I don't know what their system is like. I don't know if they have their own.
It would be, I think, Palo Alto dispatches themselves, right, for PD. Yeah, it would be a challenge, in that they're on a completely different radio
Yeah,
frequencies than us.
I'm just,
And then trying to get them, we want to ensure that all of San Mateo County still gets dispatched out of the same center so that we can continue to respond like we are. So
is this something that the board should be more actively engaged
we
in
might
with you?
need to revisit the dispatch ad hoc
Ad
committee
hoc
that we had in the
committee.
past. And so I think the best thing to do is allow me to attend that meeting, get some information, and then I can reach back out to Director Keenan about possibly revitalizing.
Yeah, we can either revitalize it or have an agenda item.
Yeah,
Just
something,
discuss it.
but I think it's a time to talk.
I think it is.
To continue with what Virginia was asking, I would want to know the actual software program in CAD, if it's confluent with ours, with San Mateo County, between
Yeah.
Santa Clara County.
Sure.
I don't think it is it?
It's different. San Mateo PD
You
uses.
guys, given the experts, I mean,
The current CAD for Palo Alto, they left Hexagon and they went back to Roots, which is a law enforcement centric one, and it's the same as most of the law agencies in San Mateo County use, but we're on Versatron.
but Santa Clara County, don't they have a different CAD than?
Santa Clara County Fire, I'm not sure, Palo Alto's dispatched through their police department, and they're using that.
You'll get
Definitely
information.
want to
And
report
we
to
can-
that.
I have some information with you I can share offline.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Outstanding staff reports for me right now, the ISO review, I talked with Chief Johnston, and we can present something to the board in November. The reason for that timeline is John is really just on right now with the report from 2700 Middlefield. So my best. So look for that in November. Which brings us to our incident update. I don't have one on here, and Chief Boyle reminded me before I came in here, we did have a second alarm fire at the end of Bay Road in East Palo Alto in the salvage yard. That was a significant incident.
Was that an additional one since the last week? Because there was one that happened right before the last meeting.
Right. Was that, I don't remember the exact date. So that was it.
If you covered it last time, Chief.
I don't remember.
Okay, so there was not two.
No, there's not. a
Okay,
second.
There's only one.
Did I share that at the last meeting?
You don't remember?
I remember one, but
Yeah,
There was just
there was
one.
only one.
okay.
Yeah, that's why. So
Sorry, my apologies.
the one fire out there has been shared.
It's been shared twice, Mitch. That's still.
Okay. Chief, I just, how much they charging us for a square foot for 77? For their,
We'll get to that when we get to the bid. That's,
Oh, I don't know what the numbers, it's
it's
in
on the
there,
consent,
you guys,
it's on the consent.
yeah.
well, then we pull it. I just want to ask.
It's in the staff report, but the staff report, it doesn't do it by square footage because it's a carport, it's a mechanic's yard, and it's a building addition. So it's three different kinds, but we should discuss it. If we need to pull it, we'll pull it. We should discuss it as part of the agenda. We can pull it. Maybe.
That, and I.
Go ahead.
Just, yeah, back to the update on our 2700 Middlefield Road. I just wanted to share with you, first of all, the cause has still not been determined. Yeah, sorry it's taking so long, but it's a challenge sometimes when you have witnesses that aren't super eager to talk about it. So we're still working on that. And on to the after action review. So in front of you, you have it's marked draft. I brought it from our after action review meeting that we had last week over in the City Menlo Park facilities. This is, when we put Chief Menard on a 40-hour work week, this is the product that was going to be a result of it. Really comprehensive, really professionally done. The reason it's in draft right now is when you go through your in-person interaction review, what you're looking to do is glean additional information from the participants there, like what else did we miss? So we expect this report will be complete by the end of the month and hopefully out in early September. Once it's out, I'll make sure the board all gets a copy via email. Our intent is also to post this up on our website so the public has access to it. And along with that, we'll also post a link to this video that I'm going to share with the board right now. This was produced by one of our own, Charles Washington, who kind of runs our video program. We do have a professional video company that helps us turn it into what it is you can see there. But after sitting through and watching it probably 4 or 5 times, just every time I watch it, I'm incredibly proud of the efforts that your district, our district, what they went through that day, how they performed, as well as how incredibly seamlessly we worked with our counterparts here in San Mateo County, law enforcement and fire both. And then also, as you'll see, it's you get a really great glimpse of the magnitude of that fire and the efforts that went into containing it. So with that.
If I could just add, if the board has more than just a few clarifying questions or wishes to have a full discussion on this video or this after action report, maybe that's something you could agendize for a meeting rather than have that discussion this evening. That'd be great.
And then just so you know, the pictures in front of you, the sheet is your cheat sheet to go with
Right.
the video.
Right.
It's in the
Because
order of.
they name all these battalion chief doing this and that, but they don't say what agency. And so this is to help you understand.
This was yes, I requested Director Bloom after he watched it, and I was going on the internet trying to find people's pictures on there, and Chief Menard had hair in our online picture, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna show a picture of Chief Menard's picture from 10 years ago, and you'd be like, that's,
Who is that?
yeah, so I just took screenshots from, if it looks like there's a screen print on their face like that, Chief Coyles does not actually look like a fish in real life. That's from that screen, the screen. And you probably didn't notice that. Look, he looks a little
You
scaly.
don't look like a fish in here.
Yeah.
You like that?
So those were just, screenshots on my phone.
The shark maybe.
But I think it meets the intent. So anyway,
The fire chief, Coleman.
he is also the
Also,
fire
that's
chief.
what I thought, yeah.
This is about a 30-minute video.
Report on location of emergency.
30 minutes?
Yeah, it's right there.
700 Middlefield Road, Redwood City, California. And what's on fire? I'm not sure, it looks like insulation. Nearly a year's worth of work completely wiped out in just a matter of minutes after a massive fire destroyed a construction site on the outskirts of Redwood City.
We're hearing from the construction company who calls this the worst disaster in the company's 92-year history.
Now, initially, the construction workers on that fifth floor tried to put out the fire with 2 fire extinguishers, but the flames spread so fast.
There's not fire keeping in there at this point. There are not the safeguards that are in the building when it catches fire. And then, of course, the wind had been.
It was a disaster. You can see what's left of that building behind us. But fortunately, there have been no injuries, which is really a huge silver lining in this, either from the firefighters or
That's what I was just asking. Can you turn it up just a little bit?
Here very often. Mark Lorenzen, he is the fire chief for the Menlo Park Fire District. And so can you tell us exactly what happened today?
Sure. About 10:15, we got a reported call of a commercial structure fire. Reports were smoke coming from the 5th floor. Possibly it started in the insulation. So We're actually in a small unincorporated community called North Fair Oaks, which is part of the county and protected by the Menlo Park Fire District. When crews got on scene, they initially saw heavy thick smoke coming from the 5th floor, upgraded it pretty quickly to 3 alarms. Construction crews were already evacuated safely out of the building. And right now we're at a point where we're at 8 alarms. The building that the fire started in, a large apartment complex, I think for affordable housing for the county, was under construction, is likely a total loss. Our primary goals right now are making sure we protect the adjacent structures and the community to the south, and also make sure we don't injure any of our platform.
All of the details are based on radio communications, portraits, and accounts from the incident. Some information is removed or condensed for ribbon. Additional details can be found in the official after action review prepared by Battalion Chief Matt Menard. Thank you to the following individuals who contributed to the compilation of this report. Additionally, we extend our gratitude to the departments and organizations that united to fight the fire and were involved in protecting the community during the Middlefield incident. Through a facilitated discussion among key stakeholders, this review aims to identify significant successes and challenges during the fire response and fire
Yeah.
That's it.
relate to operations, administration, or management at the agency or county level to improve future incident response. The Middlefield fire occurred
seem
at
to do anything.
2700 Middlefield Road in the North Fair Oaks community of Brickwood City, California. The site, known as Middlefield Junction, is accessed from Middlefield Road via the San Mateo County Fair Oaks Health Clinic entrance. Residential neighborhoods surround the area to the north, south, and east, with industrial buildings to the west. Middlefield Road is the main roadway to the north, and the Caltrain Railroad runs along the southwest edge. Building B, where the fire occurred, is at the southern end, while Building A, which was unaffected, is directly to the north.
So thanks for giving us a little full assignment. You're assigned to the construction site for installation that may be on fire. Building has been evacuated. Personnel is being Middlefield IC.
Additionally, a full assignment was dispatched at 10:14 hours for a report of possible installation on fire in a building. Responding units included Engine 3, Engine 5, Engine 9, Truck 9, and Battalion 3.
Command Lieutenant Battalion Fair County, the update Middlefield IC. Let's go ahead and balance this structure fire assignment for me. Not familiar with the construction site. Until we get somebody that I'd like to get the additional resources started.
En route, Battalion 3 upgraded the response to a structure fire assignment at 10:18 hours and requested the second alarm at 10:22 a.m., adding Engine 6, Battalion 1, Engine 4, Squad 409, and AMR Medic 22.
Middlefield Industries on scene. We got a 6-story wood frame commercial occupancy under construction. We got smoke showing on the Charlie side and full evacuation of the crew. We're going to be on investigation. We have a hydrant at the site. On arrival, I thought, my first thought was that we're going to go get this. And I laid a plan out to get up to Division 5 attack. In the first couple minutes, I realized that it was much bigger than it first presented. Making that tactical shift was difficult at first because it just went so fast.
Engine 3 arrived first at 10:19 hours, established Middlefield IC, and reported a 6-story building under construction with smoke showing from the 5th floor of the Alpha/Delta corner, with evacuation complete and a hydrant on site. Engine 9 and Squad 409 made interior access to the 5th floor, initiating a defensive fire attack with a 2.5 hand line, while additional personnel advanced 2 hand lines to the Delta side podium and began a transitional fire attack. Engine 3 also engaged the fire with a Master Stream dig gun on the Alpha side.
Yeah, so the Middlefield fire incident was an incredible experience. Certainly the largest structure fire I've ever been to. I was incredibly impressed with the command post that was set up by Chief Bolton
and then Chief Martin, he served as the deputy incident commander to Chief Bolton. I thought it was an incredibly effective and efficient command post.
I thought that the communication from the get-go was excellent. I was already had some reasonably good situational awareness and route just based on Chief Bolton's initial communications regarding the incident, the initial arrival report by June 3. And I felt that the leadership and communication, I think, throughout the incident was excellent.
June 3rd, 2700 Middlefield, I arrived and was the incident commander and stayed in that role throughout the incident. Well, this would be the first time I've ever commanded a fire of this magnitude. I've had other greater alarm fires, obviously, in my career, but nothing like this. So the experience was one of greater amounts of resources than I'm used to, operating with a deputy IC and Battalion Chief Martin as we work together to do that, to maintain our accountability of all our resources, but certainly something more significant than I've experienced before. And the first time I've ever had something like this that's going to require such an operation for such a period of time. When I arrived, I saw that Chief Bolton, who had established the incident command on the fire, was being inundated with radio traffic and resources coming in, and a fire that was escalating extremely rapidly. And so identified that fairly early on. I was the first battalion chief on the second alarm, and so as I went over to the command post, I identified that and asked that I assist him with that accountability.
Battalion 3 arrived, assumed Middlefield IC. Battalion 1 was assigned as Division 5 supervisor and Truck 9 positioning apparatus for a potential defensive fire attack. Battalion 101 arrived as Deputy IC to support the incident command post.
So far, we're unable to get any water on that fire, and we're working toward that access. So I'm going to continue to consume resources for a while as we work to get this done.
At 10:29 a.m., Middlefield IC requests the third alarm and is joined by Truck 23, Engine 10, Engine 16, Engine 13, Battalion Chief 5, and Truck 4, self-attached.
And when Chief Bolton called for a second alarm before I even got, a half mile from the station, I responded code 3 to the incident. I think he had already gone to maybe a third alarm by the time I got there. So when I pulled up, I checked in with Incident Command Chief Bolton from Redwood City over the command channel and just asked if I could take staging for him, just knowing that it was going to be a heavy resource demand and keeping track of everybody and handing out assignments was going to be a pretty important role. And I didn't want to go to the command post and cause any confusion, so I just took staging out on Middlefield. I blocked the entrance to the parking lot because there was still a lot of public trying to come to go to the health center and the other businesses in there. We were trying to let people leave, but not let people in to cause more traffic or hazard. And then Chief Bolton gave me his leader's intent that as the staging area manager, that I should keep the equivalent of a full alarm or a full assignment in staging. So then I subsequently started calling for additional resources and went additional alarms up to 8. My initial feeling about the fire when I walked up is I was concerned mostly about the collapse zone. We had a very large structure, 65 feet in height, 6 stories tall, under construction with scaffolding all around it. Then my next feeling about the fire was how aggressive were we going to be able to be with this fire, with the deck gun from Engine 3, the hand lines off the podium on the Delta side, trying to make an exterior attack from those locations. And then we, pretty quickly realized that we needed to get the aerial ladder pipes up and get some big water on this fire.
I see Division 5.
I think.
Okay, I got squad 409, engine 9 out of the building. I'm pulling all Division 5 personnel off this terrace.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's, if you concur, I'd like to transition to a defensive operation. I'd like you to start working on access for additional trucks. I think that's the direction we're gonna have to go.
Yeah, fully 100% agree with defensive operations. Nothing we're gonna do from down here.
As resources were unable to contain the fire, all personnel were withdrawn from inside the structure and off the Delta side podium, shifting to a defensive fire attack strategy. With the change to defensive mode, Division 5 was dissolved and Division Alpha was established.
Council Leahy?
Yeah, give me a fourth alarm for Middlefield.
Following the request for a fourth alarm, Middlefield IC directs Middlefield Staging to request additional alarms as needed to keep a full assignment available and staging at all times. At 10:51 a.m., as the fire rapidly advanced towards residential neighborhoods to the east, multiple companies were repositioned to prevent it from spreading to nearby homes. This effort formed Division Bravo, with Battalion 2 as supervisor. Aggressive use of multiple master stream appliances and 2.5 hand lines successfully contained the fire to the building of origin, preventing its spread to adjacent neighborhoods. To quickly identify and mitigate exposure threats to residential properties, a community protection group was established with Battalion 5 as supervisor. Multiple engine, truck, water tender, and squad companies patrolled, located, and extinguished spot fires using a structured defense strategy. An SCCO mutual aid strike team assisted with these operations. The structure protection group was highly effective, preventing residential structure fires and suppressing multiple spot fires before they spread. At 10:58, PG&E PSS arrives and reports to Middlefield IC, who requests that electrical power be shut off to the construction site and neighborhoods adjacent to the incident. At 11:09 a.m., a request was made to halt all railroad traffic, including both freight and Caltrain services. By 11:14 a.m., Caltrain ceased all train activity, covering both passenger and freight operations. By 11:32 a.m., Middlefield Staging requested an 8th alarm in order to continue controlling Building B and protect the surrounding community. After the 8th alarm, here is a full listing of all personnel that were dispatched to the Middlefield incident and organized by Incident Command. Master Stream ground monitors were set up on the Alpha side, while Truck 9 prepared for an aerial Master Stream operation on the Alpha/Delta corner. 2 additional truck companies were requested for the Charlie and Delta sides to prepare for aerial operations. 3 engine companies were also requested for Westmoreland Avenue to locate additional water supplies and set up ground monitors on the Charlie side, placing supply lines across the inactive Caltrain tracks. While defensive fire operations were ongoing in Divisions Alpha, Charlie, and Delta, multiple fire companies gained interior access to the involved Building A, adjacent to the fire building, and directed those streams from Building A toward Building B, designating this as the Alpha Exposure Division with Battalion Chief Flax as supervisor, partially preventing involvement of Building A. Additionally, several incident command and logistical support functions were achieved. Chief Wani established a staging area on Middlefield Road, coordinating resource ordering and assignment with the incident commander and deputy incident commander. A medical group and rehab unit established by American Medical Response prepared for any injuries and crew needs. 2 UAS pilots provided overhead air operations, offering real-time intel to enhance incident command, situational awareness, and decision-making. Locating the UAS pilot operations via the ICP enabled direct communication with the IC without using a tactical radio channel. Having 2 UAS pilots operating together ensured continuous and seamless situational awareness. The DJI HDMI wireless monitor provided peer-to-peer video streaming to the IC without needing a TV monitor or tablet command on an iPad. Additionally, UAS were used by truck companies to scout ingress and egress routes, quickly determining multiple access points for truck company operations on the Charlie and Delta sides of the building. A fire investigation task force consisting of 17 fire investigators and an ATF representative was deployed. Exposure concerns and residential evacuations. As the Middlefield fire intensified and advanced through Building B toward nearby residential neighborhoods, evacuations were initiated and fire suppression efforts focused on protecting homes and properties. A total of 18 residential properties reported impacts, including small grass fires, fence fires, broken windows, and other damages. The Community Protection Group successfully prevented any residential structure fires. In coordination with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, an evacuation center was established at the Veterans Memorial Center in Redwood City, coordinated by Fire Chief Iverson and the Director of Parks and Recreation. Approximately 12 displaced residents received assistance, including food, water, restrooms, and charging stations for electronic devices. During the Middlefield incident, multiple single resource fire personnel filled various support roles. Coordinated efforts of county and out-of-county resources brought the incident under control without loss of life, injuries, or destruction of homes. A total of 51 fire apparatus and over 200 emergency service personnel responded to the incident. At 16:52, command of the Middlefield incident was transferred from Battalion Chief 3 to Battalion Chief 101, releasing Chief Bolton from the scene. The incident transitioned into a fire watch mode at 1700 hours, which continued for 7 more days until 8 o'clock on June 10, 2024. Incident command was initially established by Engine 3 upon arrival and subsequently assumed by Battalion 3. The incident command post was set up in the southwest corner of San Mateo County's Fair Oaks Health Clinic parking lot. Recognizing the potential scale of the incident, Battalion 3 appointed Battalion 101 as the deputy incident commander. Due to the high volume of incoming information and communications, which was overwhelming for a single command, the incident commander and deputy incident commander divided responsibilities. They effectively managed all resources and radio communications, with each handling specific tasks such as radio traffic, resource assignments, and tracking. Now, let's take an in-depth look at the roles and responsibilities of Division 5, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Community Protection Group, and Alpha Exposure Divisions. Division 5 was assigned to Battalion 1 upon his arrival during the first alarm. First arriving companies accessed the building via an internal staircase off the podium on the Delta side, advancing to the 5th floor for an interior fire attack. However, they quickly retreated after finding the fire too advanced for offensive operations. Meanwhile, crews initiated an exterior fire attack from the Delta side podium, and Engine 3 used its Master Stream dick gun on the Alpha side, aiming to contain the fire to the Alpha/Delta corner. After about 10 minutes, Division 5 determined that the fire was spreading rapidly along the Alpha and Delta sides. For safety and potential building collapse concerns, all personnel were ordered to evacuate, abandoning hand lines on the Delta podium and preparing for defensive operations. After transitioning to a defensive strategy, Division 5 was dissolved and Battalion 1 established Division Alpha. Division Alpha coordinated defensive fire operations on the Alpha side, then along the Delta and Charlie sides until Division Delta was established. Ultimately, 3 aerial master streams and 4 ground monitor master streams were deployed in Divisions Alpha, Charlie, and Delta. Division Bravo, led by Battalion 2, focused on a defensive fire attack on the east side of Building B to prevent the fire from spreading to the adjacent residential neighborhood. This division became a top priority due to the significant exposure threat to nearby homes. Aerial master streams, ground monitors, and 2.5 hand lines were used to contain the fire to the building of origin and prevent it from reaching the homes. Division Charlie, located on the building's south side along the Caltrain tracks, was covered by Division Alpha and Division Delta throughout the incident and did not have a designated supervisor. One truck company operated an aerial master stream, while 2 engine companies supplied ground monitor master streams from hydrants on Westmoreland, with supply lines laid across the railroad tracks. For the safety of personnel, Caltrain halted train services and PG&E de-energized the high voltage OCS lines before operation began. Division Delta was assigned to Battalion 11 as the fire grew beyond Division Alpha span of control. Division Delta supervised operations on the Charlie and Delta sides of the building, sharing some resources with Division Alpha. It established and managed multiple master stream appliances to suppress the fire on the Charlie side and prevent it from spreading to the Bravo side. The Community Protection Group, led by Chief Thorne, aimed to protect structures in neighborhoods directly east and southeast of the main fire, behind Division Bravo. Multiple master stream appliances were deployed along Pacific Avenue to shield homes from radiant heat from the Bravo side, while engine, truck, and squad companies patrolled the neighborhood, extinguishing spot fires. The area covered included Pacific Avenue, the Caltrain tracks, Middlefield Road, and Berkshire Avenue. The Alpha Exposure Division, led by CH-3B, Battalion Chief Lex, positioned engine companies inside Building A, directing multiple hand lines toward Building B. Its critical operation was essential in preventing the involvement of Building A. Upon reviewing the Middlefield incident, several successes, challenges, and recommendations were identified for future reference. Here is a brief summary of key takeaways, strengths, and successes.
The first I'd like to highlight is the incident command post that was set up by Chief Bolton. As the incident commander, he quickly realized the magnitude of this incident and the need to bring in some support to help him in the command post. The communication was so incredible on this, and it allowed us to handle this emergency and mitigate this emergency in a really good way. The collaboration among all the various agencies and everybody just came together and worked as one team, as if we were one department. And the communication, the teamwork, the collaboration was near flawless.
Our biggest success is we prevented any of the homes in that community from captive fire being damaged all along the immediate exposure to the fire building and to the several blocks behind the community protection group from any type of fire concern.
Challenges and lessons learned.
You know, the number one challenge was not being familiar with the building that I was assigned to. It did take me a little while to actually get to all the floors on that building.
We had significant water supply issues where we had to put a lot of contingencies in place, from laying the longer supply lines to using water tenders to augment the water system that's over there.
We had the 6-story scaffolding surrounding the building that proposed a pretty reasonable and dangerous collapse hazard throughout the incident.
I mean, the biggest challenge for me was the safety issues when I first arrived at scene. We had the crane, which was kind of just free spooling, getting impinged by fire and then rotating. So understanding, you know, how that was structurally compromised and if it was going to come down. Also, just how close some of the apparatus were to the structure itself, knowing that collapse was imminent. The determination or the decision of when to pull back from being inside that collapse zone, trying to get a knock on this fire, to pulling back outside the collapse zone and going completely defensive. That's a hard decision to make. There was significant apparatus access issues on really 3 sides of the fire. We couldn't even get apparatus to. We had to utilize the train tracks and even the neighborhood to get water on the fire.
As I made my way over to Bravo, and saw truck 2 in place, preparing for an elevated master stream, it became apparent, I think, to all of us that we were in a fairly precarious position with that truck. And given the lack of water supply, ultimately I made the decision to pull the truck out, to retreat the truck.
Communication between myself and the Engine 3 engineer was non-existent due to radio traffic in the beginning.
You know, we've been using tablet command for a number of years, and I think when you have that many resources and that many alarms responding in a very, very short time, tracking those resources on a tablet panel, which we use for our tracking of resources, was another significant challenge. We had to locate a number of different hydrants. I believe Cal Water even boosted our pressure at one point. But locating hydrants and good water supplies to supply the aerial trucks, you know, was a challenge, but one that we met and succeeded with. Another challenge was, you know, making sure we got the Caltrain OCS electrification line shut down, as those were very close to the fire building, and we were in the process of laying hose across the shutdown tracks to set up ground monitors.
After reviewing the Middlefield incident, here are some key recommendations for future incidents. Assign a deputy IC early in large-scale incidents to assist at the ICP. Division/group supervisors should use clipboards to track resources. Utilize ICS identification vests to better identify command positions such as IC, division/group supervisor, safety officer, and staging area manager. If resources permit, assign a safety officer or assistant safety officer to each division in large-scale incidents. Notify the water company early when there is significant demand on the water system so they can increase pressure as needed and throttle down when the incident winds down to avoid damage to mains and valves. Establish a water supply group to locate hydrants and assess water supply demands. Provide additional training for fire personnel on commercial and defensive firefighting operations. Provide UAS support for each division to improve situational awareness for supervisors. Conduct radio education and training for personnel on necessary transmissions early in an incident and the importance of staying off the radio when appropriate. The fire at 2700 Middlefield Grove on the morning of Monday, June 3rd, 2024, became the largest single building structure fire in the history of San Mateo County. The Middlefield incident called upon 8 alarms, 27 engine companies, 6 aerial ladder truck companies, 6 battalion chiefs, 4 water tenders, 2 SWAT units, 2 breathing support units, 2 mutual aid strike teams, 18 single resources, 17 fire investigators, 3 SMCDM resources, 2 AMR transport units, 2 AMR supervisors, and multiple law enforcement personnel were ultimately called upon to mitigate the incident. In total, 51 fire apparatus and over 200 emergency service personnel responded. This unprecedented event required exceptional leadership, coordination, collaboration, communication, and interagency teamwork among all first responders and involved stakeholders. Remarkably, the main fire was contained to the building of origin, with no fatalities or injuries to first responders or civilians, and minimal exposure damage to nearby residential structures and properties. The many personnel who responded to or were involved in this incident should be commended for their professional and tireless actions, which resulted in the best possible outcome, given the tremendous potential for greater impact and harm. This after-action review aims to tell the story of the fire, highlight the incident's strengths and successes, identify the challenges and lessons learned, provide recommendations for future consideration, and present topics warranting further discussion. It is intended as a training and educational tool to better prepare emergency response personnel for future large-scale.
That's wrapping up. Just a few quick comments before we turn it over to the board for any comments or questions. Obviously, I give you great perspective on just the Herculean effort that was necessary to contain that fire to the building of origin. First of all, kudos to both Chief Menard and firefighter engineer Charles Washington on what you saw here and what you have in front of you, and then just the collective group effort to come up with truly what is the most professional after-action review I've seen in my entire career. So I'm sure this will be broadly shared and used across the California Fire Service. You know, and then also I just wanted to highlight the value of both our automatic aid and our master mutual aid systems here, you know, within the county. I mean, we were all at significant draw. Every single fire agency in the county scraped everything they could together to help out in our fire district. You know, what you heard was the single, it was the largest single building fire in San Mateo County history. So truly a historic loss. So for that, sorry that the audio was a little low. It will be up on our website if you guys want to watch it at home with some popcorn and crank up the volume. It's really a great watch, and I could, again, I would imagine your feelings are the same as mine. You just feel this immense sense of pride for our firefighters and for just that seamless work together with partners across our county and Santa Clara. So that.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest that we hold questions or discussion on it for council's recommendation. Also, what I would recommend is we agendize the discussion on it when this report is final. Sure. And then we can have an actual full discussion. Board members can ask whatever questions. I thought I had an opportunity to watch this previously. I liked watching it a second time too, you pick up new things. But I thought this was an appropriate use of time. This is what we do all this work for, you know, is to be able to have this kind of outcome. So yeah, my compliments to it, and I think to the chief's perspective, it does prove out kind of the value of the mutual aid system.
What are we waiting for this to be final?
Oh, when we met last week, we had people that haven't necessarily had a chance to offer up some suggestions and additions. So that's really 99.9% of the report is done. So just if there's any additional lessons learned that we had, and we were trying to pull it out of people that previously necessarily hadn't had input. So we provided in-person input and via cards, and then there was also a QR code, so if people wanted to do it online.
So we don't have to wait for the cause of it to finalize?
The cause is not, it's not gonna be a whole.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll, Chief, when you, yeah,
So that you know, this is on YouTube also.
Yeah.
so Chief, when you have this ready, we'll put it back on the agenda
Got
then,
it.
as an agendized item. Okay,
I would-
So just like, who has seen this? Like, did
This?
it go to the, obviously to the,
This report?
the
you know,
video.
the video?
Oh.
I mean, I know it's on
We're gonna-
YouTube, but I mean, like, is the board?
So I will share, my intent was for you to be the first to see it, obviously, we put it on our YouTube channel and.
Everybody.
So who's seen it? Probably quite a few people. We will now, that you've had a chance to see it, we'll put it up on our actual website. And probably put it out via social media, I'm sure District 10 would like to put it out also, so
Yes,
it'll be broad.
and probably 13 Italian
Yeah.
sheets too.
I don't know that they have a active social media.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Everyone would like to share, because it really is a career fire. Oh, and also, of interest, for 3 of our brand new rookie firefighters, that was their very first day on the job, on a fire engine, and that was their first fire. So, yeah, right.
They may
Not
never,
every day
they
will
may
be
never
like that.
duplicate it again in their entire career.
They will not.
Yeah, do they ever?
What are the divisions you refer to when you talk about these things?
Sure, they, in here, it changed over time. Initially, when it was a high-rise structure fire, they had Division 5, which is based on the floors. The person assigned to the 5th floor is Division 5. When they pulled out and went defensive, they set up Division A, B, C, and D, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And usually where the command post is where the Alpha division is, and then you go clockwise around, for your other divisions. And you divide things up geographically, so you can also assign resources, maintain what we call a span of control, which we like to be 5 to 7 units to 1. And then sometimes we also set up a group, which isn't specifically a geographical area. It allows them to kind of move around, that we had that community protection group, and you saw that 1 battalion chief in charge of like 20 resources, so we violated our span of control on that. He was very busy over there, but that's how we set those fires up.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anything else for the chief's report?
That's it. Oh,
Okay, thank you. Did you,
I wanted to ask a question about the chief's report about this.
go ahead.
I'm open for questions.
Put my questions down here. Oh, here it is. I wanted to ask about the Station 1 design. I feel like we always put it off, but we've never really talked about the specifications. How many apparatus are gonna be included and some things like that. And we're already talking about building it right now, and we've never talked about those things. And I mentioned this, right, I mean, one reason I mentioned it is because I'd like to see how we can avoid making the kind of mistake we made with Station 2, where for 3 feet, somehow we never thought we'd have a ladder truck in there, or I don't know what happened, such that we put the doors on in a way that didn't allow all that to fit. And when do we put the specs out for what's supposed to be in Station 1?
That is probably a better question for John Hitchcock. I don't know if it's appropriate to call somebody up for that conversation or not, or whether we can.
I mean, the question is, when are we gonna have this talk, or the question is, you want answers to all these
No, I'm not
questions?
asking for,
The first one,
when are we gonna talk about it? But
Okay.
tonight, we're voting on starting to build or something.
So just so you know, we're not voting on anything. It's just an update. They're moving through the very, very slow molasses-like permitting process and all the other things. The facilities committee obviously is going to play an important role, and we'll come back. I don't remember what the specific milestones were for our steps when the board makes decisions. But But I'll get back to you and let you know, at next meeting. I know the board will have an opportunity to review it, have input on it, and the facilities committee also before we ever get there, so.
There's multiple checkpoints built into it from facilities committee that will come back to the board. So before any significant costs are expended or anything else, there'll be additional board discussion with you. You'll recall, I think it was last meeting, we had the architects in, or the meeting before, I forget which one, that presented the conceptual drawings and everything else. That was part of all John Hitchcock's kind of early phase process, which is to get a conceptual approach to the building. And then the facilities committee is working with staff to align the multiple checkpoints, of which there will be many with the board. And certainly before expenditures are committed or additional money spent.
And then I had one other question that's related to the automatic aid update. I didn't quite understand the connection. Automatic aid initially, when you start talking about it, focused on our relationship with Palo Alto and the south end of the district. But then somehow Woodside came into it. And I don't know, is Woodside working with Palo Alto also, or we're talking to Woodside like we're talking to Palo Alto, or what?
No, so their relationship is they would like to have the same relationship with Palo Alto that we would. And we both would like to be able to respond mutually into each other's areas to be the closest available resource. So they are just like us. We border Palo Alto,
They do too.
so, and so do they. So we both have a mutual interest in forming that relationship and an automatic aid agreement with Palo Alto.
They border Palo Alto on the
Los
on the
Conchos.
west side of
Portola
the two eighty and Portola Valley, going off like Erasmus Road and other
Los
places.
Conchos.
So there's multiple areas of common borders between those two.
Well, there's borders with us too as well, right? Don't.
Yeah, we do too,
We
but
border them as
We
well.
already have automatic aid
with
with.
Because they're in
the
the county.
San Mateo County.
Okay, that's, I just didn't understand the connection. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, a mutual desire to have agreements with Palo Alto. So, okay, any other questions on chief report? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the consent calendar. Just so you know, we are removing item number 6 from the agenda altogether. There's a supplier challenge on that item, so that's just being removed from the agenda completely. And then I think, Rob, you had asked.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to approve. the
But
motion.
let me just see if anybody has any other items that need to be pulled before we do that.
Yeah, I'd like to pull number 4 and number 5, please.
So number 4 and 5 will pull, and now you can go ahead with your motion for items 1, 2, and 3, or 2 and 3.
7, 1, 2, 3, and 7.
2, 3, and 7. I got my
I'd
sticker
like
right.
to make a motion to approve the consent calendar 2, 3, and 7.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on the pulling of it? Okay, all in favor of pulling sorry. All in favor of approving items 2, 3, and 7, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously, and then we can go on to item number 4, which is the Freightliner truck. Chuck,
One, I think it's a good idea to discuss major purchases, just to make sure that we have the time to be thoughtful about it. So that's one thing, but I want to ask about this. I mean, we're proposing to buy a brand new truck. And one of the things that surprised me is why we have so many of these things. I mean, it seems this would be the 5th truck, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of, and it just doesn't seem like at one time we have that many things that we need to be moving. It talked about moving that old car that we were doing a training session on, but it just didn't seem like we had a need for that many trucks. And so I'm trying to understand.
Sure. I will share this conversation. I'll attempt to address some of it and then turn it over to Chief Wordinger, since a lot of this has to do with the task force meeting. So, part of what we're doing here is having the fire district purchase the truck as opposed to purchasing it with grant funds. What that allows us to do is it removes a lot of the burden with tracking and then surplusing those items when they come to the end of life. And it also allows the fire district to use that equipment because it's theirs, and so that's what some of the joint use is for us hauling and moving things around in the district. As to the number of tractors or, semis that we need, I'll have Chief Wordinger share with you what the needs are of the task force.
So we have $6.8 million in federal equipment that we travel across the country with. And in order to make that happen, the federal government has a travel plan. The travel plan includes four heavy movers, trucks, one box van, and essentially, I think it's, do some math in my head, I think it's seven light vehicles is what we move the task force across the country with. The fire district has a 10-year replacement policy for all of our vehicles. The vehicles in the USAR world are extremely dated. This is part of a plan with Chief Lorenzen to update our equipment and bring it into a 10-year compliance. The other thing specifically with heavy diesels is in 2020, the California Air Resource Board came out with requirements for heavy diesels. Any diesel that operates within the state of California is required to meet California air emissions requirements. Currently, 3 of the 5 heavy diesels we have in Task Force 3 that there's a district is responsible for do not meet the California Air Resource Board qualifications. So of those three trucks, we are going to replace them in the next 18 months.
I wasn't really asking about why we should replace them, because I agree with the age and some of that. I was just wondering about the number. So you're saying it's contemplated that we could take a convoy across the country with all of those trucks?
Every single time we go out. We will always leave with a convoy. We will either travel across the country or we will travel to the Air Force Base, and some of those vehicles will be placed on military aircraft or lifts. If we are not able to go military, we will still take those vehicles to San Jose Airport and load our equipment onto the planes. It's really from point A to B of how we need those large movers.
And is there any issue with using diesels for a relatively limited amount of mileage and relatively infrequently? I mean, are we somehow destroying the engines or something doing that?
No, sir. No, sir. There is one of the reasons in 2025, all dealers in the state of California will have to sell one electric tractor or semi-truck, whatever we're gonna call it. But one tractor will have to be electric prior to selling 3 diesels. So we were able to get this purchase done by, they did us a favor by allowing us to order a truck without signing anything, because normally the dealers will not allow you to order a truck unless you sign a contract with them. But they allowed us the opportunity to order a truck without signing the contract until the fire board approves it, because starting first quarter of 2025, they don't even know if they're gonna be able to sell any diesels, because the electric tractors are not very desirable. But the state of California will not let them sell any diesels without, it's a 3-to-1 ratio. For every one electric truck, they can sell 3 diesels. So it's going to be difficult to purchase the other 2 tractors this upcoming year because of that.
And
This emissions change has already complicated it.
Yes.
Because it took otherwise perfectly usable diesel trucks and said, you basically can't register them going forward or use them in the California road system. So the CARB rules accelerated essentially the retirement of trucks. It's also what led, I think, about 2 to 3 years ago to the massive protest out at the Oakland shipyards, because the shippers basically don't have the capability to stay in business.
Are we of the belief that the electric semis will not perform
Correct,
adequately?
so in talking to, the dealer in Reading, which is the low bid, he says that the counterpart to this tractor, will make a round trip trip from Reading to San Francisco and back again. However, it will only be able to be laden with equipment from Reading to San Francisco. It will make it back to Reading after that, but it'll make it back to Reading empty. So truckers make their money by always having something on the back of the truck. So they basically the state of California is requiring truckers to buy a truck that is not functioning. Which is why we're gonna have a problem next year buying new trucks, because we're not going to be able to buy them.
New diesel trucks.
New diesel trucks, correct.
This may be one of my other things that, and I think everybody, most people here, so chief and we had looked into, or the district was beginning to look into, electric vehicles. And then we was looking into, fire engine, number one, was first thing. On the horizon, I don't know, will there be room in the all-electric vehicle scenario at some point where some of the trucks, I know the fire engine are happening right now, but some of these other vehicles you're talking about, do you see in the near or distant future those being replaced with all electrical vehicles? And if so, are there manufacturers around that are probing into that?
So this doesn't just, the CARB compliance does not just affect the heavy trucks or the tractors, but medium duty trucks, 15,000 pound gross vehicle weight trucks. Those trucks are targeted as well. So it's not either they're going to have to make improvements to electrical vehicles, or the state is going to have to change the law. I think those are the two options that is going to happen, and I think that electrical vehicles are making leaps and bounds. So I think that might be an option, but that is way above my head director as far as how that works. But I just see the trains coming, and one or two things are gonna happen. They're gonna change the law, or the electric vehicles are gonna get better.
The federal line companies, especially in comments, was trying to, of course, maybe it began to reopen the thought of electric vehicles, whether they exist now or whether there are companies that are out there that are in the process or of trying to develop that technology so that it can work. I know there are some trucks that are out there that they in other countries that they're using for flight drivers. So the question is, where are those manufacturers who are exploring those thoughts? And I think it may should begin to look at having a dialogue with companies, whatever.
Okay, so I want to just keep the dialogue, no disrespect to the request, which is a broader topic, but we have a request for a resolution awarding the bid for this particular truck. And I want to keep the conversation focused on, are there additional questions about the this particular approval? And with that, what I'll do is I'll put the motion on the table that we approve the resolution to adopt this bid for this truck at the $190,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by myself, a second by Virginia, and a third by Rod. So if I heard it in order, now we can finish the discussion. Are there any further discussions about this particular request specifically? Chuck?
Do you have plans to stop or order additional spare parts to be able to service these in the future?
So one of the reasons why we have the 10-year service right life for our vehicles is, American manufacturers are required to keep vehicle or maintenance parts on the shelves for 10 years. So the service life of this vehicle will always have, they're required by federal law to have parts available to repair that. I hope that answered.
There also wouldn't be a part shortage anyhow, because these trucks are not being banned in other parts of the country. This is a California specific, resources.
And this truck will meet all of the California CARB compliance, just like the two movers we have, heavy movers we have now meet California CARB compliance.
I just have one last question, sort of related, but is there going to be any issue with the availability of diesel fuel?
Negative. The whole, our nation runs on diesel. Just about every state outside of California, both 49 states and Canada and Mexico use diesel to move heavy.
Yeah, but we can't go to Arizona to fill up. I'm just wondering whether.
Well, no, California, they'll always have diesel. Well,
Because
For
trucks.
the next decade.
yeah, for the next decade.
The useful life for this truck,
Yes.
you'll have diesel.
Okay, thank you. And who monitors that, by the way? I mean, who in our district researches that, or is that John's job?
Yeah, judging by John's responses, John's on it.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so there's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. And then the next one that we, I believe, pulled off was item 5, which was the resolution for Station 77.
Okay, we're open to questions. We also have John Hitchcock, who's available. If you would just like us to go through it and present it as if it was a regular agenda, you do that.
To me, there's a staff report on it that outlines what the project is. So I think we can just go to specific questions, assume the board members read the staff report.
Well, I pulled it off because, I know it was there, it describes the project, but it doesn't describe. I didn't get a feel for what we're gonna spend the money on right now, in other words, what's gonna happen with this money and how far will we get into the project before the specifications are actually.
Okay, so let's do our same approach as we should always do, which is, let's have a motion in a second, and then we'll open it to the questions.
I'll move to adopt the resolution for the fire chief to execute a contract with Greenberg Development and Construction for Station 77 improvements in the amount of $1,689,975.
Second.
And we have the second, okay. So your question, Chuck, just to make sure I understand the question is, I'm not sure I understand the question, so maybe. you can clarify.
I just don't know what are they gonna do, or what's gonna be the product of all this?
I'll have Michelle promote John Hitchcock to.
He's promoted, he can.
Oh, awesome. John, if you heard the question, if you could answer Director Bernstein's question, just talk a little bit about the scope of the project and what we're getting for the $1.7 million.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So there's 3 different pieces of this project. There's the fitness room, the mechanic shop extension, and the carport. The fitness room project has already been completely designed and permitted, ready to go, ready to be constructed. The mechanic shop extension and the carport are 99% designed. They've already gone through the permitting process. However, there is some required contractor work doing exploratory digging to determine what the existing foundations are around those areas. So once we approve this contract, the first thing the contractor will do is they'll go out there, they'll do some exploratory digging, determine what the foundations are. They will be responsible for completing that portion of the design. We will then go back to the city of Menlo Park, resubmit, obtain those remaining 2 permits, and then they will perform the construction activities. So the 1.7 million is for the exploratory digging, the remaining permitting process, and the construction of all 3 portions of this project.
And John, can I add to it if I may? So
Yes.
there's three components of this particular project that are done when it's done. An additional carport for the storage of additional resources that should be logically undercover. There's an expansion of the mechanic shop. That mechanic shop expansion is necessary so that the trucks can be serviced in an indoor environment with the ability to lift the cabs for the service. The way that's designed is if there's not a truck in there, they can do in tandem 2 engines instead. So it's flexible, but it will hold for the first time the ability to fully, in an interior environment, work on a truck. And then the last part of it is converting the patio area to the fitness room. Fitness room at Station 77 is similar to some of our other small, very small stations. They currently use the apparatus bay for fitness, which is less than ideal because of the residual exhaust fumes and other things that are not exhausted. This creates the separate, the property has space for it, it creates the separate fitness room.
Okay, it wasn't absolutely clear to me from the report that it consisted of like a little bit more research, more design, and then the construction. I thought maybe it was only the design, and then the construction was gonna be later, so that just wasn't clear, but now I understand, so when we're all done, the project will be done.
Yes.
I do have one comment, and that is, I'm actually very positively impressed with this company that you found. And I don't know if the answer is we're getting ripped off by all these other companies with much higher bids or not. I mean, the difference is extraordinary. And for them to complete it at this kind of a level and come in under budget for the project that just completed, again, I think it's commendable, and so hooray for them.
One additional note that John had mentioned when we were going over the bids is that, and you can correct me if I get the numbers wrong, but I think they had kind of a bid walkthrough and they had 12 people show up and then six bidders, and which is higher than normal. And John was thinking it might be an indication of the economy starting to slow in the commercial construction business, which might be a great opportunity for us, especially as we're looking forward. So fingers crossed on that.
Well, these people seem to have a different background too for residential construction.
These do, and I mean, obviously, yes, they are bidding much lower, but yeah, in addition to that, we're also seeing many more companies interested in bidding than we've seen in the past.
Any more questions on this? We have a motion second. Hearing no more questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we have unanimous approval of item 5 in the calendar. That completes the consent calendar because item 6 was pulled completely because of a supplier issue with the door company. So that will come back at a later meeting. So moving on to the regular meeting, we have approve the 4th amendment of the employment agreement between the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and Fire Chief Mark Lorenzen. This was part of his performance review. And so I will make the motion on this. I move that we approve the 4th amendment to the employment agreement with Chief Lorenzen to increase the chief's annual base salary by 10%, which takes it from $333,800 per year to $367,180 per year.
And it's divided.
I'm gonna talk about
Okay,
that separately.
Perfect, I will second that, I'm seconding that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and then I'll just add some additional commentary. Essentially, the breakup of that 10% is roughly a 7% increase to deal with what has been kind of ongoing compaction issues with our salary tables in the district, where there are a number of employees that are paid above the chiefs. So 7% is addressing that. Then the 3% is kind of the COLA increase, cost of living increase that would be kind of a normal thing for this point in time. So we're addressing both of them in a combined proposal. And then secondly, I would just comment that the board did look at data with parity with other chiefs in the area. And this $367,000 recommendation is also within parity with other fire chiefs of similar sized agencies in our area. And so on that, I will open it it up to any questions or comments any of the board members would like to make.
Is there a motion?
There is a
Yes.
motion and a second for the change. And Steve, did I reflect the motion correctly?
It's your motion, but you phrased it correctly.
That's what I'm asking. I'm not asking you to opine on the amounts, just the structure. Thank you. Chuck?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak in support of a little bit more fiscal discipline on the part of the board. This is an example of what we used to call in business school the mañana syndrome, is that we'll fix everything tomorrow and not do it today. And we have a problem, and that compaction is a problem. And I don't mean this as a criticism, it's simply a fact that our chief actually determines that there's compaction. In other words, the chief makes the decisions that his other chiefs make a certain amount of money, that's in his purview. And when that happens, compaction happens. And it just seems that it's a system that really isn't fair to our taxpayers or the public. That in a sense, the chief is making decisions that end up impacting his own compensation. I mean, somehow it seems like we ought to have a better way of doing that. And we're trying to, certainly at the federal level and with the Federal Reserve, trying to inject some discipline and get our core rate of inflation down below 3%. And we're getting there, we're doing it. We're looking for, below 3% for the core rate of inflation, below 4% for total inflation. And to be talking about 10% increase at a compensation that's already very high just doesn't seem right. Now, I agree that the chief should be the highest paid person in the department, and aside from deployments and so forth. I think that's correct. But what we've done is the board has not done enough to limit the increases that are awarded to the other chief officers. And the result is it's pushing Mark into a higher compensation area. And we have alternatives. We could reduce the amount paid to the chief officers, and I think that's one solution. I would certainly vote for that if enough board members supported it. We could also put some sort of a cap or a moratorium on increases for other officers. And again, they're paid very, very highly. And it just seems to me at this point excessively. And the total increases, that somehow the department will always have this game of increasing the steps 5% or whatever, and then increasing the COLA, which is another 3% or whatever. So we have these 8% increases, which exceed inflation, and certainly our desired inflation. And I think the time to do something about it is now. We could, and I think we should, limit compensation for chief officers right now. And I think that our chief is the person who needs to kind of lead that discipline, and I'd like to see him do it. And instead, what we're doing is voting to increase his compensation because we haven't done a good job of having discipline ourselves. So I'm going to vote against this. I think a 5% increase certainly would be above the inflationary level. It certainly would be a good increase, and it's an increase that I could support, but not 10%. So I'm going to vote against it.
Robert?
Without the voting on compensation we had in closed session, I think they were the sentiment of the group that over the course of the next year that the board, along with the assistant from the chief, is going to look into the area of compaction, look into the historical way things have been moving over, I don't know how long it's been around, but I know it's been around at least 5 years since I've been on board. But I think at some point, this whole area of trying to bring everything in line, salary and everything in line with some progression over time, It's a dual thing, we just gotta sign together, the board, to kind of figure out what that looks like. And begin to set, policies and procedures in place to make sure that there is parity throughout the whole district. Because we are in no competition with other fire districts, through what they pay employees and vice versa. So I think we just need to follow our course that we outlined in the closed session to try to bring closure to this.
Probably anything to add? So the only kind of additional information I would add to it, appreciate all the comments, is, one is I think this compaction issue started more than 5 years ago. It's been a long term.
It's been at least 10 to 12
10
years.
to 12 years, so it's took 10 to 12 years to create it. I don't suspect that there's compensation strategies that resolve it overnight, short of ones that cause what I would characterize as unnecessary employee satisfaction issues. Secondly, I would just point out to everybody that amongst the group that the board looked at from a comparative perspective, which is five fire chiefs of similar sized fire departments, our chief sitting here today, starting position before this increase, is the lowest of that 5. So we are just simply bringing the chief into the range of the other fire chiefs in the area. So from a competitive perspective and being fair to our chief relative to what other cities and municipalities are paying, we're well within the range of that. So on that, I think everybody's had a chance to comment, and I will put it forward for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Dave?
Okay, so it passed 4-1, with 4 board members voting for and Director Bernstein voting against the change. So the motion passes and the chief's agreement will be amended. The next topic is item number 9 is the Task Force 3 Cooperative Agreement grant application. And I see you brought along a subject matter expert on that topic too.
I will.
But before you go there,
Okay.
can I have the motion that we approve the resolution or approve the informational?
I'll move.
What's that?
I think this is just an informational item.
Then we don't need a motion.
Okay.
There you go. Yes.
Okay, so information, share your information.
I'm gonna start, and if you have questions, I'll refer you to Chief Wordinger. This is really an informational board report. Sometimes we deal with the federal government coming to us at the very last moment with very, very tight deadlines, and that's the case that we have here with our cooperative agreement funding for the upcoming fiscal year. So we have had to submit the cooperative agreement to FEMA. And at some point in time, correct me if I'm misstating this, they'll get back to us with an award, that it will come to the board for acceptance, and the board will be able to approve it. But what we didn't want to do is, and we, I think, had conversations in the past on just trying to be really transparent with what's going on. So we had a very tight 2-week window. It was submitted, I think, last week. Is that correctly? Yeah. And so again, the board still ultimately has to approve whatever the federal government awards us, but the amounts, the award amount that we applied for, the $1.4 million and change, is what the amount is that we're being told to apply for based on the funding for all 2018. So that's really what we wanted to do, was share with you what John and his team has done over there, and then open it up if you have any questions about the process, what we've submitted.
I don't have any questions. I would comment that I'm glad to see that last there's some increase into that. It's been a relatively static number. This is, I think, the first material increase in quite some time, the budget amount. So that's a nice change in anticipation of an increased grant size.
The last time we discussed this, we had to cut our reimbursement from Task Force 3 for the use of our space. And that's the increase here is conditioned upon us spending more money. That is, here it's going, right now it's going to personnel. which means we have to spend more on people to get the money back, so we're not getting anything for it, we're just able to have more people and get a higher reimbursement.
So I will share this. I mean, obviously, our cost of the existing staff goes up every year, cost of benefits and merit increases in COLAs. That said, with the additional funding that's coming in, what it means is, once you offset those costs, the district is having to subsidize the task force program a little bit less, right? So if we're getting $150,000 more than last year, I'm just throwing that number out, we're not spending another $150,000. Some of it goes to offset costs. Some of it may be spent, but generally, we're maintaining the status quo in task force. So this additional funding that we get, and we're hoping still for a more significant increase in funding. We still haven't heard what Congress has decided. Some of that may enhance the program in additional funding. And a good chunk of it will be hopefully offsetting the amount the district subsidizes the program.
I'm not trying to argue the point because I'm ignorant about it, that's why I'm bringing this up, but how do we subsidize the program, for example? I mean, give me an example of a subsidy.
So here's a great example. In years past, we allocated 10% of Chief Wordger's salary to the task force. And the other 90% was covered by the district. Reality is it's probably the other way around, where 90% of his time is spent there. So that's an example.
But we're not getting more money, we still get 10% of the salary.
Well, if we want to change, like in last year, I know you had issue with it, we stopped charging them rent, right?
Right. They weren't reimbursing us for the use of our space.
We had a choice. It's like a closed, funding. There's a pot of money, and that pot of money, whether we allocate $120,000 of it to rent or $120,000 to Chief Wordger's salary, we still have those expenses in terms of the opportunity cost of the rent or Chief Wordger. So it's just, do we want to be fully reimbursed for rent? Do we want to be fully reimbursed for Chief Wordger's thing? We still have costs that the district is going to end up bearing no matter where we allocate the costs in that.
I don't disagree with in his case, because it's kind of a fixed amount. But typically what we're doing is we're adding up all the time people spend on employment and sending a bill for all of that.
That's a separate issue with the reimbursements. When we send people out on a deployment, we get fully reimbursed for the personnel costs, probably, and some overhead for that. That's not usually built into this specific budget. This is just what it takes without a deployment to run the day-to-day operations.
This is just for the overhead portion then?
This is just our administrative.
There's two, when we signed the agreement with the federal government to sponsor California Task Force 3, there's two grants that we get, or cooperative agreements. The first grant is the readiness grant, and that's the 1.2, the 1.3, the 1.4 this year. If all the fire board members contact their senator, it might be 2.0 million next year, which would be very helpful. But that's the readiness, and there's a response portion. So we just sent Joe Carvello out 3 times in the last month and a half on incident support team status. And when that happens, when an actual event happens, Congress allocates funding to that event, and then we get paid out of that event 100% plus an administrative fee to reimburse us for that time spent doing the back end paperwork for that. So normally we'll have, when Chief Morrow had passed it off to me, he said, don't have any more than 3, possibly 4 readiness grants open at any one given point in time. And on the response side, try to get that to 0. Because if we have 0 response grants open, that means we're completely reimbursed by the federal government for us going on an actual emergency. So there's 2 sides of that.
Mark, really quickly, is that readiness side, the 15 million that Congressman Mullen is going after? I think that is right. That per year, I think it's the 15 million
that would bring up the total for readiness for the country to like 56 million. He's going after the 15 million to put, I think it's in the congressional budget, I just don't know where it is. Do you know where?
So the US Congress has amended the federal emergency management budget under Homeland Security to $56 million for the task force. So what that
Well,
means
with all 28.
for all
around the country.
2018, what that $56 million works out to be is if the Senate amends their side, then we will receive $2 million from the federal government for Task Force 3 next year. The senator, just looked her name up, she's out of LA, she has an office in San Francisco. She sits on the Homeland Security Subcommittee. I think we should probably talk to her.
Well, it
But
sounds
the-
like the California congressional members are all aligned.
Yeah, so all of so the House has to pass appropriations, and the Senate has to pass appropriations. And if they're the same, the president signs it, we'll get our $2 million. Right now, the House with Congressman Boland's amendment adjusted the appropriation. So if the Senate does not put it in their appropriations for FEMA, then in the end, when they make the budget, there's gonna have to be significant lobbying going on to keep the $2 million for Menlo Park Fire. But that would be
That's good to
a
know.
$600,000 increase, which would be a significant increase.
And that's on the readiness side.
That's on the readiness side. But the response is pay hour per hour and a percentage over the hour that we receive back. So that's never been an issue, it's the readiness.
And the response side has always been kind of reimbursed in that strategy as far back as the time I was, in the leadership role at the task force. The secondary thing, just to be careful so you don't get confused, is when you talk about the readiness, typically there are funds that are left over from the year or 2 years prior for carryover purchases, things like a big equipment purchase, you might roll funds from 1 year to the next year. And so at any given time, there might be 2 or 3 grants that are still open. Typically, I think it's limited, they limit us by process to 3, I believe.
So it's every readiness grant is a 3-year cycle, and we can apply for extensions. During COVID, they automatically extended everyone's open grants because there was no way to train and there was no ability to buy anything. So for a while, right after COVID, I think we had 5 grants open just because of complexity.
That's a COVID
But
exception.
that's not a normal.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. We want to spend our money prior to the end of the date, so we don't lose it, because there are agencies of the 2018s that don't spend their entire grant, and when they don't spend their entire grant, they lose that money. And to my knowledge, we have never lost any money for task force.
Yeah, I can give you an example of carryovers back in the time I was involved. We were ordering the box truck, which I think we're now retiring because of carb issues, but the box truck could not be delivered in the grant year. So we applied for an extension to spend it in the next grant year. But in that way, we preserved those funds and did not have to use funds from the next year's grant to fulfill the order that had started during the prior grant year. That would be an example of just timing issues. Robert?
Yeah. Okay. Help me out with the, on the budget summary, showing.
You're good. I got it. Keep up.
760. You sure?
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
To look under, where it says storage and maintenance. And it's, I assume it's for the Uso building, it mentioned about 81,000 is set aside or being requested for equipment, supplies, contract, and construction. So is that slated for that particular building?
So there is no, we can, under the California Part 2 CFR 200, I probably quoted wrong, Bert would be disappointed in me. We can, request ahead of time funds be used from the grant specifically to upgrades to the warehouse, but we'd have to get permission from that prior to. The money that's in here for, maintenance has to do with, the federal government has had issues with things like task forces letting their tires rot on their trailers and trucks and waiting to go out the door. And then when they roll a tire, they pull money out of the response
budget instead of readiness.
instead of the readiness budget.
Right.
So and this happens so often that the federal government put out a program directive that said thou shall have a policy on tire replacement and thou shall replace your tires, and we're not paying for blown tires on deployments anymore. So we have to put basically $10,000 to $15,000 a year away for tires. There's things like our equipment for hazmat needs to be monitored or calibrated on a monthly basis, and we need to ensure that that calibration materials that we have, like the gases are, we actually purchase those and then we pay a vendor to calibrate our machines. We have to ensure that every year our task force members get fit tested, and there's a contractual obligation for that. And then there's things like our medical, we have a lot of the same equipment that's in the fire district's purview, we have over in Task Force 3, so our monitors require maintenance, so that's where that maintenance line is.
Right. So in terms of if there were some areas of under the needed work design building that in the future that could be that line item where it's G, the testing and construction, that can be used for any type of.
And and we found this specifically in the Code of Federal Regulations. They allow us to use those funds for that, but we have to request that ahead of time.
Right.
And I can say that they're very helpful to us. They understand that the timing of everything is not the best. Even although we put in this request in for money, we can move 10% of the money within this budget without even asking the federal government. And if for some reason we're moving more than 10% for whatever reason, we just have to ask them ahead of time. And very rarely would they ever say no.
Move it where?
Well, from category to category, so personnel fringe benefits, travel, equipment supplies, contractual, construction, other, we can move money anywhere within this cooperative agreement, the grant, up to 10%. So
Across columns and down line items?
yes, 10%. As soon as we move more than 10%, so it's a $1.4 million grant. As soon as we move more than $140,000 out of place from what we asked for, we have to get permission to move that. And when we do our quarterly, semi-annual, and annual reports, we have to report to them how much of that money have we moved outside of where we said we were going to spend it. So they're very concerned about misappropriation of funds and ensuring that we're spending the money where we're telling them. And if we decide to not spend the money where we're telling them, they just want to know ahead of time what the plan is.
And with that said, the number in the bottom right corner of the spreadsheet does not change.
And Director
You're
Jones.
just shifting money around.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this dovetails into the conversations we've had on the facility committee and the warehouse improvements. There's not currently any money budgeted in the readiness funds for warehouse improvements, and there's no short or long-term plans to do that. So that's a separate general fund discussion, and we separately, put a pause.
Yeah, I understand that, I got that. It's just that if in the future, if there is a future, this is a source of possibility.
Hopefully we get the $2 million in 2025.
You get more money, you get more flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the task force, having been involved in it for a long time, I think it's a long process to make everything fit in these buckets. and within the number that Congress get, or the FEMA allocates to us. You know, a little bit more helps, but the reality is if you look over the history of the grant sizes, you know, they haven't really even been keeping up with the cost of the goods that we have to buy and everything else. So a jump of $600,000 or so will finally make a material difference. Otherwise, you're just rounding errors on the cost.
Or the shuffling money around.
Yeah, and shuffling money around, but the shuffling happens because things, you can't forecast every aspect of your spend 12 months or really 18 months in advance. Yeah. Jack?
I was just curious, this year, for example, this summer, we've done, we haven't been deployed as a task force at all yet, is that correct?
We've sent, an IST out to Puerto Rico. It was categorized as tropical storm twice, and then Hurricane Beryl once, and then I think there's another hurricane. But we've had, Joe Carvello has been, in Puerto Rico for probably a net 20 days, I think, in last month.
When that happens, what happens to the budget just in general?
So that, like I stated before, this is the readiness.
I understand that.
So what happens is, on the response side, the budget will come out as, they'll deploy Joe Carvello, and then we will put in a, initial budget request. We have a certain amount of, time period to gather receipts and gather pay stubs and gather, airfare and all that paperwork, submittal, and get it to the federal government within 30 days. They will give us a percentage of that, request right off the bat, and then they will review the balance of that request to make sure that we're not, asking for anything that is outside of the Code of Federal Regulations. I think, recently we put in for 6 hours pre-deployment, and we're only allowed to have 4 hours pre-deployment. So that's how granular they're dialing down on how much they're being reimbursed. And then we have to come back with the incident commander actually authorized 2 extra hours, and then there's that whole discussion. So there's a significant amount of work that Bertha Hernandez just does as our grants manager with the federal government to receive and make sure we are completely whole on that piece.
So in general, it wouldn't have any impact on this budget?
No, it has nothing to do with the budget.
It has-
It's a completely different.
Think of it as an expense report for the expenses associated with the response. Those expenses are paid, and then if you look over in the treasurer's report, the treasurer's report keeps track of our unreimbursed, meaning that we billed the federal government for the reimbursement, but we haven't necessarily received a full reimbursement yet. And so it's tracked on the finance side, but it initiates by the finance manager at the task force.
But the finance manager, for example, who does those reports is reflected in here, is that?
So we receive, yes, there are. So, depending on what agency of our 16 participating agencies and the task force actually put out the employees, there's an administrative fee that is agreed upon with the federal government for the Code of Federal Regulations that allows us to recoup the other costs. So there's costs associated with our general administrative staff running numbers, just like there's costs of the other general administrative staff from the 16 agencies.
And then is that a fixed number, or is that some percentage of what we would be getting
It's
back?
a percentage of the overall. It's very similar to the Cal OES program. There's not a lot of new thoughts in government record.
One interesting thing, you know, in the case of what John is talking about with the deployment of Joe Carvello, he's not even our employee, so correct me if I'm wrong, none of it even hits our budget, right? San Jose Fire Department, his employer pays him. We fill out all the paperwork and FEMA directly reimburses San Jose, and then we get some revenue in the form of it, overhead costs or administrative.
I think we actually have to draw the money to the sponsor agency and we funnel it that way. So that there's always when the federal government gives us money, they don't actually tell us what they're giving it for. So we have to get that money and then review what we asked for and then find out it's 2 to 3 days after we receive the money. It's a difficult.
I think the good news on this is we have staff members, both on the task force and in finance, that diligently track this to make sure that, and that are very good, to make sure we get 100% of the reimbursed dollars to the right places. And I think right now we're down to a very small amount of outstanding reimbursement. Yeah, as far as what the district's carrying today.
But to me, the big issue or potential issue, I'm not saying there is an issue, but the potential issue is the subsidy that we have to put in. And when we first talked about this long ago with Harold basically said, the district doesn't spend a dime on this. That we are fully covered, fully reimbursed. But as time went on, we realized that it wasn't always true. And that's why I was asking the question.
Okay, let's go ahead and close this discussion and we'll move. Thank you, John, for patiently answering all our questions. Appreciate it. And we will move to item number 10, and I'll ask for a motion adopting the resolution authorizing the fire chief to execute the side letter, and then we can discuss it.
I'll move.
Okay, so Rob moved
I'll
this,
second.
and Virginia is the second on it. And Chief, would you like to?
I'm gonna see if there's any questions. Obviously,
We
this is
discussed
something
this
that
a
was
few times.
discussed in closed session a number of times, so we're gonna sit here quietly unless the board has questions.
As a reminder, this is the discussion about the tools allowance and realigning the process back to the way it's always been. Okay,
I will have comments on it, but I don't have questions.
well, now would be the time for comments, because then we're gonna vote and close it, move on. So go ahead with your comments.
Well, I think this was, we did a smart thing when we eliminated the tool allowance, and it's $200 a month per person. So that mechanics could have their own tools. I mean, we're basically giving them a huge, you know, kind of a treasure chest of tools. And it came to a head back when somebody was leaving us, they were retiring and they wanted to sell us back the tools that we already paid for. And it just struck a lot of us as a bad precedent. And I think we did a smart thing by getting rid of the tool allowance. And I hate to see us reinstating it. And I feel like, I mean, the chief has reversed himself on this. Originally, he supported the district owning its own tools and having the mechanics use the district's tools. But apparently this is kind of an issue of, I don't know, job satisfaction or something like that for the mechanics. But I mean, the things here that just don't make sense. One of the things we're sort of scared into how much this is gonna cost us if we keep on the path that we were originally on of eliminating it. And they're talking about needing $100,000 per mechanic's position of tools. But you know, when you divide that by $200, you get 500 months, which is 42 years worth of reimbursement. So I mean, I think some of the data here, I think is kind of a scare thing. It's really not accurate. And I'm even troubled by this issue of part-time employees getting a prorated allowance, which what that's saying, in my opinion, is that if somebody worked half-time, they either get money for half a screwdriver, or they get half the number of screwdrivers the guy working next to them does. Well, if you work half-time, you still need the same number of screwdrivers, you just need them for only 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day. I mean, it doesn't make sense, it's kind of an irrational thing. I'm disappointed that the district is gonna go back to this. And I'm gonna vote against this. I think we should have our own tools, we should subsidize the materials. And I think that's especially important as we're about to see a big change in the nature of the tools that we need. When we go from diesel trucks to electric trucks and so forth, it's gonna change the types of tools, the types of diagnostic equipment. I think the whole game changes at that point. Yeah, so I'm opposed to this.
Okay, so I think we discussed this endlessly, And these perspectives are not new perspectives that haven't been discussed. So if there's other comments, I'm gonna move to close it. If there's the discussion, if there's no other comments, we'll just move to the vote.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, so we'll move to vote on this. There was a motion and a second. All in favor?
Right?
Aye. All opposed?
Nay,
Okay, so this passed 4-1 with the nay vote being Director Bernstein. So thank you to staff for all the work that was done on this. I know it was thoroughly reviewed. Appreciate that.
For many months.
For many months, discussed over and over.
but-
Okay,
but
so-
You kind of editorialized on many months. Let me be
Yeah.
clear, this has never been discussed publicly before. And I think it's something that we're hurting our taxpayers and the people we serve by what we're doing. And I think it deserves a public airing. So I don't think it's fair to be critical of a public discussion. This is the first public discussion of this item.
It's a one-sided public, hearing of it, so the motion's been moved, seconded, and voted on, so that topic's closed. So we're going to item 11, which is to adopt a resolution approving the reclassification of the fire prevention coordinator position to the permit coordinator. And can I have a motion on that, and we can have chief discuss it or staff discuss it?
So moved.
Okay, so moved by Rob Solano, seconded by Director Jones, and we will add this to the chief for any
Quickly
discussion.
tee it up just with, I'm gonna send it over to Francine for some, to provide the board with some information. This comes with a recommendation from the HR committee for full board approval with that. Francine, sorry.
So this position, is a vacant position. It's been vacant as of December 2023. And during this, vacancy, we had it filled, with an acting person performing the role. But during that time, fire prevention wanted to kind of assess the needs in the department because of our online permitting system, kind of a change in the fluctuation for permits that were needed to be reviewed or submitted. So they went through, kind of reviewed, their current processes to determine what the need is before just automatically fill the position. And it was actually determined to kind of slightly downgrade the position to a permit coordinator, someone that could be, at the front counter to answer kind of questions, help with the online submittal, do some, administrative as well as some, technical kind of permit work. And so what we're asking is if we can, reclassify a vacant position that has no direct impact to any staff, and establish the salary range we looked at our comparator agencies, as well as internal equity on setting the salary for this position. And then we also have a job description attached that details the duties for the new classification. And once the board approves, what we'll do is we'll open a recruitment to begin looking for some qualified person to fill classification.
Any questions? So there's, seeing no questions, the motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that passed unanimously, thank you. And the next one is to adopt a resolution amending the conflict of interest code, and I'll ask for a motion second, and then we can staff discuss.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Director Solano, seconded by Director Corrali, and now you can clarify what's going on here, but it seems to me to be pretty obvious, which is you're just changing the positions that are inherently affected by the conflict of interest policy.
Yeah,
Is there
it's
more,
a
is there any
list of,
more to that?
it's like, yeah, it's just a list of designated employees,
Employees that
and
that
we're just
have to-
recommending deleting a position that no longer exists and adding the assistant fire marshal who was approved in 2023, but we didn't have a biennial review in 2023, so this is the first opportunity to add that position to the conflict of interest code designated employees list. And I wanted to bring to your attention.
So you're not really amending the conflict of interest code,
No.
you're amending the list of designated
Well, the
employees
list is part of the
code. I
code,
understand,
so that's the only, those are
Change,
the only
right?
changes that we're making, and I just wanna bring to your attention
noted on the staff report and on the resolution that, there was a title, misspoken title, it says emergency response manager, which should have said disaster response manager. That's just in the second paragraph under discussion in the staff report. And then, in the resolution, the third whereas in the resolution, both of those items will be updated to reflect the correct position title before it gets signed and for the permanent record.
Okay. Questions?
Clarification, Michelle, it's you. I noticed that on the discussion, item number 1 and 2. So if I understand you correctly, that you're deleting the disaster response manager and you're gonna, now substituting that with the assistant fire marshal
Not substituting.
or adding.
The assistant fire marshal is a completely separate position. It's not a substitute for the disaster response manager.
So you just eliminate that title? Totally?
Yeah.
Okay. So, which leads me into the question. Who or what position here at the fire district will function in the role of the disaster response manager?
So Director Jones, just to clarify,
Yeah.
through this action, you are not deleting a position and adding a position. You are just approving an administrative update to the conflict of interest code to reflect a change in the organization that has already been accomplished with the board's approval.
Okay.
So the board has already, you're not deleting any positions here. That's not to say that we should answer your question, who's doing this job, but I want to clarify that that's not related to this action.
Okay, I mean.
So now let's answer your question.
Yeah, how to answer that question?
It's an easy.
That is, I believe, Ryan's, right? So nobody really, I mean, this is all, those jobs and functions of both Ryan and Andres are gonna be assumed in some context by the, what's in it, the title? The risk reduction, yes, for the risk reduction. So, yeah, current, and still that's part of rebuilding that, you know, kind of that part of John Johnson's team.
Okay, all right. Long as the one is.
That's a position that
That's
just
not-
went
yeah.
away and was replaced by a new organization structure.
Yeah, well, whoever it is, let us know who that person is, so that I start working on that.
And when we, if and when we add that person, whatever role they are in, Michelle very well may decide that that person is required to report. Is this for Form 700 reporting? Yeah.
That was basically
Yeah,
the
so-
stage.
So, then make some kind of determination. But we don't have an added key. Okay, let's stop.
Okay. Good idea. That's good. I was gonna stop you if you didn't stop. So, okay, so we have a motion. Is there any further questions on it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passed unanimously. And we can go on to the next one, which is whether there's board members. I know there are 2 board members at least that have items to put on our proposed agenda item list for discussion as to whether we put them on the agenda. We'll have that discussion next week. So there's.
I mean, the third one.
Okay, maybe there's 3. I know of 2 coming into the discussion. You had 1.
I withdraw it at this time.
Okay, so you don't have 1. Okay, and Virginia?
Yeah, and so, I will add, I wanna just put on as a future discussion item on a future agenda, this issue that came up at the Board of Supervisors meeting regarding, Constitution, California Constitution's Article 34. And, basically what it is that the state was gonna try to repeal it, they're not gonna put it on the November ballot, but the Board of Supervisors is gonna do something else. And basically, I just want, it's regarding housing and community input. So I want us to have a discussion on whether or not we would like to send a letter, one way or the other, to the Board of Supervisors to get input from from the special districts that provide essential services. I know that Supervisor Slocum and Supervisor Canada wanted input from the the special districts and the school districts because the growth affects the enrollment and the services that we provide. I think that Supervisor Mueller wanted just to have a letter to go out to the cities, so the cities have been giving feedback. So I've been kind of going around and, trying to solicit feedback or encouraging special districts in my role, just as a special district representative to, just if any special district wants to give feedback to the to the board of supervisors, they can do so. But anyway, just.
So I think the agenda item request, if I can
Yeah.
repeat it back so that Michelle can record it for the next meeting, is to decide whether the board would like to submit a letter as a special district to the Board of Supervisors, recommending that we have input into their housing and community input process.
As with regard to.
California Article 34.
Yeah. They're getting feedback from the cities, and I think since we provide essential services, we should, especially after.
We don't need to hear the
Right.
rationale why or anything else in
Yeah,
this meeting. We're just
that's the.
trying to
that's the
we're
next
just trying to
thing.
memorialize
Yeah,
that.
that's the next
Yes,
item.
the
That's
request
next thing.
is
Yes.
to whether the board make a decision whether we're
To send a
providing a
letter.
letter.
Yeah, either way. Thank you.
Robert, did you have one? Did
Well,
you-
the next board meeting is to decide whether or not it'll go on.
It'll go on the
future
agenda, it doesn't go on the agenda.
Right, it'll go on.
You can provide more context of what it is.
Yeah,
at
correct.
the next one, when we vote whether it goes on the agenda.
I just a question. For clarification.
Sure.
For me.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this involving like 200 or more units for different egresses, or is it?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop that, that's getting into
I'm
the,
trying to figure out.
that's
what
getting
it's
into the
about.
discussion of what it's about. We'll have that discussion at
Okay,
the next
cool.
meeting.
All right.
And if we all agree based on that discussion at the next meeting, that it should be an agenda topic, we'll then schedule it accordingly.
Okay.
The agenda.
Okay.
Just bring that question in.
Just save that, keep it in the holster.
Yeah.
Okay. Robert, did you have a
request?
request?
My request is that we begin to reopen the discussion on electrical vehicles for the fire district.
I'm going
Okay.
to add one more.
Vehicle for the district, okay?
Give all the fire chiefs.
Can I add one more?
Yes, you can
Okay,
add
and
one more,
that's-
so
In light of the situation with the Palo Alto fire and, what we wanna do with mutually, I wanna talk about maybe reinstating or doing something for how we wanna do the ALSGPA. Just the dispatch issue, that ad hoc committee,
so you want to reopen the dialogue
if we should have one,
on an ad hoc committee,
basically reinstate it.
for dispatch.
Yeah. And
Okay.
that doesn't, I don't know how important that is as a high priority than to others, but maybe it's the wrong time, but the point is that I think it should just be on our radar.
Okay, any other requests for future agenda items? Okay, I'll close that. We'll move to committee reports, starting with HR.
Okay, we met and we discussed basically two items. One was that, first we went into closed session. And your email was helpful relative to evaluation of our council. And HR is going to prepare some type of a questionnaire as we have with the chief relative to that. And this second part was Herbert chime in anytime.
Yeah,
What-
you're doing a good job, Brian.
And then the second one was, we were going to downgrade the position, which we already discussed. And accommodation, looking into the process and procedures, different types of accommodations, or is it going to be a resolution, accommodation, and such, and HR is going to prepare that for us as a sample. Thanks,
So,
Francine.
just to make sure I understand the two of the items, that on the one item accommodation, at some point, there'll be a staff report of some kind supporting the HR committees go forward on this.
Full board.
And then regarding the council review, is the committee gonna come back with a proposal for a process for the council
It'll
review?
be a process and a form that HR is going to.
Okay, for the full board, it will come back to the full board.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Facilities.
The only thing we talked about a good number of things, but I think the item number 5 and the item agenda, L number 2, we talked about contract for Greenberg development. And also, Chief mentioned, in his report, which item it was. But anyway, we had a good, I thought our meeting was great, it was good, and I think the project will be coming back to the board once it goes through City of Menlo Park, to the planning department, PTs, worked out, and get some signals from the Menlo Park Planning Department, what areas that they just need to go back and re-examine, so that's pretty preliminary when you start construction, and to get that, once you get those comments back from the city, then there will be, plans will be begin to take more shape at that point in time.
No, the only thing I would add is that as far as the Station 1 project goes, the only thing that we're kind of overseeing is the expenditure of the funds that have been already approved by the board for this preliminary work. But we're not obviously allocating or directing staff or anything to do work outside of the things that have been approved by the full board.
I wanted to ask you, it's only for the station construction and it doesn't relate to the training tower?
Now, it's this.
In terms of what you presented,
It has to do with the whole site, and it will take into consideration the training tower. So once drawings that, like they have already been drawn out, schematics, somewhat gotten, put together, those plans need to go to the city needs to look at them, then they need to make their comments, they will approve some things, they may question some things, and they say, hey, no, go back to the drawing board, that would come back to staff look at it, and then talk to the architect, and, so once the issues come back and they get addressed, and they go back for the city for the final approval.
So what was presented?
This is consistent with what the architect presented here, which was the Station 1 complex.
Right.
So it's the administrative and storage building, the tower, and the Station 1 itself. So it's all 3 structures. Okay. Consistent with the board's direction to pursue the whole project versus just rebuild the station or just, not have administrative there or not. So consistent with the decision to have the Station 1 complex that includes the admin building.
Ms. Culver.
Okay, any other questions for facilities? Thank you, Robert. Finance.
So
It's a short-
unfortunately, we did not have a meeting. I had to actually cancel at the last minute because of a personal emergency, but everything we discussed tonight and approved with the exception of tonight's items is item 6 that was on consent for the Byron EPP door solutions. That was not that was the only thing that we didn't discuss tonight. Also, just on last month's agenda was also this month's, sorry, a few weeks ago, there was the item to actually discuss our grand jury responses. So that should probably go on to the September agenda because I think that deadline is the end of September. Yeah.
Yeah,
So FYI, I just wanted to.
So the plan is to discuss the grand jury response at the finance committee, the next finance committee.
Because it's an
And then
auditor
that
issue.
will be on the agenda for the board meeting.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
the
because that,
same month.
yes, because that's internal controls, that's why it's going into finance. So just FYI, that should go on the finance committee's agenda for September. Got it.
So the only other thing I would just mention as part of the finance committee is in the spirit of being fiscally and financially responsible stewards for the community, is that our earnings as of, for the month ending June 30th, 2024, was $696,000, $307.10.
Got it.
So
At a 5.44%.
so I think we are being fiscally responsible in the management of the district's funds.
Can you tell us what page that's on? I have trouble reading these reports.
It's not terribly difficult, it is on the second page of the camp report.
It's basically
It's
like the
attached.
summary.
It's
So it's
the-
page 2,
It's page 2 of the camp report.
and tell me the numbers you just read,
$696,307.10, which is the far right column, cash dividends and income for the month ending June
It's
30th,
right here.
2024.
696,307, and we're yielding it at 5.44%.
and you're on page,
You're doing it from page 1, you can do it from page 1 or 2.
Oh, I'm
The
doing
easy
it,
one
yeah,
is
I'm doing
page
it
2.
from.
Go to page 2, Chuck.
Yeah, either 1 or 2, I'm doing it from
Okay,
page
I'm
2.
sorry.
From 1. That's because the summary, it's the consolidated summary statement right here. It's right here. Page, it's right here.
This number.
It's this right, it's right here. And this is the. No, you're looking at. It's the same.
okay.
Right there, this is it, yeah.
On the agenda,
Yeah, no.
we're coming up on the end because we're ending committee reports, liaison reports,
Yeah.
and then ad hoc committee reports, and reports requested directors and presidents. Okay. Did I go too fast? Okay, we have it. Okay, so let's move on to the
Can I just ask
liaison
a quick
reports.
question about this, real fast? There's a lot of really interesting, sort of economic, discussion in here, what's coming up in the future and so forth. I was just curious, in the finance committee meeting, do you talk about this or what effect that's gonna have on the portfolio, or what do we do with that information?
Yes, we hear, so.
So
Virginia, I can
the
address it.
investment advisor does come online on Zoom to give us updates, and Elaine's there, so he does work with Elaine when needed. So, I mean, he doesn't go through this entire report, I mean, just the highlights, basically. And if we have questions, I mean, you know,
But we'll
but
always,
sometimes we don't have him there, right?
I think
like-
we've had him on the full board meeting as well. on
Yeah, we
occasion.
have, this is just
Yes,
it,
but I mean, this is a process that goes on continually.
yeah.
But they do have an advisor that gets on with the
Well,
committee
he
and talks
works with
about the
Elaine.
trends and directions,
Yeah.
shares the perspective that he's working with staff on.
so
that's
it's
where-
just,
Well,
it's just
basically,
an
he's
update,
going
you're not
over-
making decisions.
No, it's basically this report.
The decisions
Our
were,
main,
no, the decisions were made based on our investment policy.
right,
So the only thing that they operate under is the direction that the full board is given
Cool.
through the investment policy.
Right, so when you say decisions, Chuck, the committee doesn't make any decisions except moving things forward to the full board.
Okay, I just was curious what happened with all this good information, it wasn't there.
Well, he's been on, I mean, we could,
It factors into kind of how they're managing the portfolio within the policy, and it's giving the transparency necessary to the finance committee in their oversight role to make sure that we believe they're adequately managing the district's resources.
Well, the yield is quite good, I mean, I think that this is a
but
positive
that's
thing.
why we did what we did. The board made the decision to move everything because the short-term yields are higher.
I just have one stupid question remaining, what does CAMP mean?
The actual
It's like
abbreviation,
California.
California, I don't know the exact,
Is it the name of it, is it the name of the fund we're invested in?
With their-
Okay, that's fine, I just wasn't sure
it's a
what
fund
it was.
name, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to liaison reports. Town of Atherton, I don't have anything to add other than the chief already mentioned that we met with, the chief and I did meet with the mayor and the city manager, trying to remember his official position, George. And so we had a meeting with the two of them, there's nothing else to report for Atherton. East Palo Alto, Robert?
Couple things, two things really. the city had a fantastic, throughout the city, a great national night out event. I attended two different areas. Well attended in the areas in my block, that I live on, and everyone came out. We had a variety of people, from different nationalities, and the food was fantastic, from Indian to, Hispanic, Mexican food. Somebody did some barbecue ribs, they had fried chicken, and it was.
I was out of town this year, but I'm coming to your neighborhood next year.
Theirs is the best. I went last year, but I couldn't make it this year.
It's just fantastic.
Theirs is the best.
And also, the American Red Cross and REPAC, it was an organization, separate group that worked in the city, partnered together and to go out and install 105 smoke detectors in 31 homes in Palo Alto. And at the end of the day, I cooked everybody's children and came back.
Awesome.
How many?
Where?
105 smoke detectors
Over 31 homes.
in 31.
31 homes.
That's great. That's potential saving of lives, nothing better.
From all the reports when I hear about the fires in Palo Alto, that is the number one thing that when they do this report is that there's no.
I think since I've been on the board, the only fatal fire we've had was lack of smoke detectors since I've been on the board. So getting smoke detectors is critical, so great. And La Park.
I just have one thing that is troubling to me, and that is, in the recent deadline for city council candidates, Menlo Park had 2 seats that were open. Both candidates, a candidate from one district, a candidate from only one in each district. And therefore, they were just elected, and these are people that no one's ever heard of, they've never served before, no one knows anything about them. So to think that 40% of our council is a total black box is just really discouraging for the electoral process. And that guy Shankman, who came around filing lawsuits about discrimination and this and that, I think it just has really undermined democracy. And I think it's too bad. Anyway, that's all. So yeah, we're gonna be dealing with a city where we have no idea what the direction is going to be.
The county of San Mateo.
I think just the big items, the thing I want to put on the future agenda, I will just to have the,
That's,
yeah,
okay,
and hopefully weighing in on it.
so nothing's.
That's really been their big thing.
And San Mateo Pre-Hospital JPA.
Oh, we didn't
probably-
meet.
You didn't meet?
No, we didn't.
I can almost
We're
write
supposed
that.
to meet in September, I think.
Are y'all meeting, I was gonna ask, are y'all meeting in September, Rob, or do you think we'll cancel it? Rob?
Rob, there's a question to you.
Is it easy?
No, yeah.
It was just a question whether there's a
planned
planned meeting in September or whether
Do you think
you
they'll
anticipate
cancel it?
cancellation.
They said there's a meeting, so,
Okay.
they need a quorum, you've been there.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, ad hoc committee report, Virginia.
So after the last meeting, when we got feedback from the community, Gary, the chief, John Johnston and I met, and we're just trying to refine this policy, so hopefully it'll come back in the next few months. Bring with more input.
Yeah, John had a pretty good, having heard the conversation and listened to the recording, had a pretty good layout of a plan to start addressing the community concerns and
Yeah,
board
yeah.
concerns with the policy.
Start addressing what?
The board
community
concerns and the community concerns with the policy. So work in progress, back to the work in progress status on that one. Okay, reports, requests of directors. Anything to report, the directors for us?
Start?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay, I attended on the 17th, the community service meeting. Chief was there and Heather was there also, and all 3 major volunteer groups were represented. And It was a really good meeting and a good cross-section, and I did not have any of the Mr. Softy ice cream. And then, I also, yesterday, being a member of the executive board for the, Special Districts Association of California, for Region 4, there's some legislation that again involves wildfire management, and wildfire overtime, and the state's lagging behind a little bit, those types of reimbursements for funding, so they thought it was gonna be a short fire season, but it looks like it's not, so I think we're in for another one.
Yeah.
That's all I have to report, thank you.
Okay. Chuck, anything to report?
No.
Virginia? Okay, so I'll close that section and move on to the president's report. So just, I want to make a couple comments. One is a process comment. I understand that, you know, some of the board members voiced frustration to me about placing items on the proposed agenda item list in advance. So ones that I was notified of saying, hey, I'm gonna propose this. I have a general view of that the time to propose those is in the public session. And that there's no need to put them on the list in advance, because all we're doing is memorializing the request for an agenda item. And then it would move on to the agenda the next time when we're actually going to discuss it. So my fear in the process, and the reason I've done it that way, is that my fear is that if it's printed in the agenda up front as that first stage of the proposal, is we'll end up in discussion on it because it's on the agenda. And it really doesn't belong on the agenda until which time we're gonna address it, which is the meeting after it's proposed. And that's when Michelle does put it on the agenda. So I just wanted to just kind of fill in the blanks on why that's operating that way. EPREP committee we covered. I would just mention I did have an opportunity to, as I've done previously, to attend one of the EMS classes. This one was on, you know, kind of a regularly scheduled item around EMS trauma training. A little different this time in that Melanie Stars helped deliver it, but the actual trainer was paramedic Jeremy Robertson. And I have kind of two comments on it. One is the quality of the training is just really incredible. I can't emphasize enough the level and quality of EMS training that's being delivered. It's addressed towards both EMTs and paramedics. I'm attending purely out of my personal interest as an EMT. And it's helpful training for me and the trauma calls that I handle in my other volunteer work. But the quality of the training is outstanding. And then the second thing that I'm just always impressed with is the level of engagement and participation by the people attending it. So it is not spectator sport. It's an active training. Part of the training is hands-on. And for this particular training, they had a really cool new device, which is essentially, if you think about the CPR dummy, this is a CPR dummy that is controlled by an iPad. And so the paramedic doing the training can adjust the symptoms, the blood pressure, the pulses. They can put an IV into it. So they can actually, quote, treat the dummy, and the paramedic can be modifying the symptoms that are going to see how fast and how rapidly the team is actually detecting the symptomatic change of the subject. And so that kind of equipment is just invaluable because you're about as close to a real human line there as you can. And both Jeremy and Melanie are particularly proficient at making adjustments to kind of catch you off guard in the course of the training. So you know, just again, two comments. Really, you know, as a community member and somebody that does do emergency medical work as an EMT, yeah, it's just unbelievable confidence builder seeing the training that goes on here and the dedication by the people attending to participate and learn during the training. It's really, really spectacular high quality. So compliments to the chief and staff for doing a really good job on it. And it's a perspective that most of the board members don't get to see. And it's really impressive. So I just wanted to share that. I wanted to just kind of state my ongoing appreciation of the district's deployment of mutual aid resources to the large scale fires in California. yeah, I know that Dan Coyle and Chief Lorenzen both as chiefs making these decisions. I think some of these were made while you were out of town on vacation. Is always a balancing act between our adequate resources being in the district to how much can we give to the state to help out with these. And I think we do a really nice job of really supporting the state. And these are fires that can't be handled by local jurisdictions, obviously. Yeah, there's resources coming from out of state for these fires. They're so large this time around, but I think we do a really nice job of balancing the resource allocation from, supporting the effort, but not putting our own district at risk of not having adequate resources. And then I just want to highlight the, kind of the proof point of the North Fair Oaks fire as to why we have mutual aid resources. And sometimes we've had many discussions in the board dialogue. Sometimes, we take more than we give, and sometimes we give more than we take. But if you look at the North Fair Oaks fire, from my lens on it, we've probably consumed 2 or 3 years of our give on mutual aid resources, if not more. We could be in the debt category to these other agencies for a long period of time, given the amount of resources that, and a lot of those engines, I don't know all of them, but I know some of those numbers were all the way up to San Mateo, and I think touched on Daly City or South City, one of the two, I'm not sure which.
Santa Clara.
And then secondary Santa Clara sent a strike team from
Milpitas also.
Santa Clara sent a strike team from out of the county as well, or 2 strike teams. So just this whole idea of sharing resources, locally and statewide, it works. And I think we have to take comfort that sometimes we're giving a lot and sometimes we're taking resources. But it works both ways. I had on my list just the congrats to Virginia Robb being candidates for our 2 open positions. No election necessary here. In this case, we're not getting unknowns like Menlo Park might be. I think we're getting known quantities. And it is saving some money along the way by not having other candidates running for the positions. And on that note, I will open it up for a last public comment. Do I need a last public comment? Nope. And on that note, I will adjourn the meeting and we'll see you all in September.
9:44.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.